roster construction in the NFL is so important. You know about this very well. A number of years in the league, doing your thing, playing at the absolute highest level. And someone brought to my attention that the Cowboys roster construction, the way they did things in the 90s, Jerry Jones, Jimmy Johnson, how they began with it, a big offensive line, talented running back, serviceable quarterback, excellent pass catchers. That roster construction is still, in a sense, being implemented today. So we can look at the way the roster's been constructed during the time the Joneses have been there. And number one, the question I pose to you, do you see some similarities? And the second part of that question, I want to say to you, is that method of building a roster still conducive to success present day in the way the NFL is constructed now?
Do I see some similarities? Yes and no, right? The yes part of this whole thing is that you want to try to do your very best with building good up front. When the Cowboys was in their heyday in the 90s, they had the great wall up front. They had those guys, one of my good friends, Nate Newton and Larry Allen and Big E and Stepnoski and all these guys up front leading the way for Emmitt Smith, the NFL's all-time leading rusher. So yes, you do want to start inside. Inside with the offensive line. And for the most part, when you look at it, the Cowboys have done pretty well with building and establishing an offensive line. Remember, there was about a 5-year period where the Cowboys, without a shadow of a doubt, had the best offensive line in the National Football League. Before Travis Frederick went out with his illness, you had Zach Martin, you had Tyron Smith, you had Ron Leary, you had Doug Free in those positions, and you switched some guys out. But that Zach Martin, Travis Frederick, Tyler Smith was the core to that offensive line. And then you try to build a running game behind that, and off that, use the play action game. And a lot of the coaches that have come in line have been coaches that come from that old school type of system. Part of the reason why I wanted the Joneses this year to kind of go off script and go get one of the first year guys, the younger guys, the innovative guys, because they don't come from that foundation of the old school way of doing things. And
hold on for a second, because you're talking about going and getting a coach. When you're talking about Shotty coming in the fold, he's coming from that old school perspective as the head coach.
Absolutely. We all know who his pops is, right? His pops has that. So what his style is, fundamentally, it's based in the Marty Ball foundation, right? So it has a lot of the old school fundamentals to it with the kind of a new school twist to it. It's I will say it's unfair because we know what those early 90 teams ended up being, right? You see the Hall of Famers all across the board. And there's one thing in particular that we hear that is happening so much now is you're trying to build that culture of winning, those guys who had that. You ask any of those guys, you had guys like, of course, Michael Irvin, who was the culture setter for the Dallas Cowboys in the 90s, and Charles Haley, guys like that. And there were other guys in that mix. You had a ton of top-notch players all across that. Now, the one thing about the roster construction that is a lot different, and Jerry, this is his gift and his curse, because back then, there was no salary cap. If people remember, if you're old enough to remember, the salary cap came into play because Jerry Jones was the one that was pushing it and implementing the salary cap be set. He kind of thought he had it thing figured out, and he didn't want teams trying to overspend him to get the players that he had. And so once you implement that salary cap, it's only so much of the pie that you can spread around now that you're paying quarterbacks the amount of money that you're paying them today. So there are still some fundamental things that those 90 teams built that you still see currently with this Cowboy team. It's sometimes the Jimmies and Joes of that fundamental build aren't quite the same as what they had in those early 90 teams.
No question. And just on a side note, I would love if the NFL league-wide would implement every 5 years, 1 year when you can remove the salary cap and make any deal that you want to make, sign a player for how long, however you want to sign them, because we know that NFL contracts are essentially signed on toilet paper. However, I would love if we could just do that every 5 years. That would make things a little bit more interesting, in my personal opinion.
No, I mean, and Jerry probably with the money that he makes, you would hope that he would be a top spender. You would
You would
hope.
think that.
You would think that. You would think that. But he ain't even spending the money that he got now.
Oh my God. No,
Maximum ability.
no. We know over the past, 5, 6, 7 seasons, the Cowboys have been absolute last, butt naked last when it comes to spending in the offseason for free agents. So, all that said, roster construction, as you touch on it, and you touched on culture as well. We know that you can have a very talented roster, but that culture is important as well. Shadi coming in, trying to set the culture a certain way, trying to change things a little bit different, maybe make some adjustments from what they've done in the past couple of seasons. So far, seeing Shadi in the head coaching role, what things have you noticed that you like so far?
You know, from the outside looking in, I've gotten a chance to speak to a couple of players inside the locker room. You know, it's people are saying that they like the competitive, fun nature that Shadi is bringing to the program. That at every turn, you hear more guys. Michael Irvin was on his podcast the other day talking about how they were in the meeting room, and he was in the wide receiver meeting room, and the coach called up, 2 players, and they had to race to the board, and they had to write out every single position on the play, not just the receiver position. They had to know where everybody was going in that particular play, which is a much more advanced level of thinking when you're talking about breaking down plays, to know where linemen have to block and running backs have to go and tight ends have to go and where the quarterback is looking for reads. In addition to every wide receiver spot, that is an advancement on learning the totality of a play. And most people, the good ones, who understand how a play is constructed and how it's designed, it allows you to know as a receiver how I can run my route, what number of read am I in this route, and do I have a little bit longer to work about the line of scrimmage? So I hear a lot of that from the players, that the culture of competitiveness, fun competitiveness right now. I know that it's early. I know it's just OTAs, mini camp starts next week, but the culture of competitiveness is one that has players really excited about the way Shadi's coaching this team.
Like that. Now, I want to interject. This is something I did not throw at you before when we talked about the show. Now, you mentioned Michael Irvin visiting the wide receivers room present day. While you were with the Cowboys, did he ever enter the wide receiver meeting room, or was there ever a former player that was allowed to enter the wide receiver meeting room?
The one thing that I will always applaud for, you can have as many wrongs as you want when it comes to Jerry Jones, right? The one thing that I will always applaud Jerry Jones is he welcomes, he wants, he desires for those players to be around his current players. Those yesteryear players, sometimes players take a little bit too much, take advantage of it. Charles Haley will have his dogs running around the facility. He got Doberman pitchers that just running around with no leash on in the facilities. But yes, Michael was in meeting rooms. You've seen guys when they come into town, players that win being in linebacker rooms. You've seen Darren Woodson be in DB rooms. You've seen guys like that. Jerry is always, even to the point where if you want to come to practice, you're welcome to come to practice. Till this day, you go to the Star, you're a former player, you can go and eat in that cafeteria. They want you around their players. You want to go into the weight room. He does not now, unless you've done some bull job and you ain't quite right. He don't want you around. But if you're walking a semi-straight path and you haven't done anything that's kind of shamed the organization, Jerry wants you around, and you see those guys around all the time. The biggest part about it is the dynamic of trying to get the younger players to understand some of the old school players understanding that the way that you learn things ain't the same way that these younger players are learning things. So you have to have this cool dichotomy of how you can get your message, your older message, into the mind of the current players. But yes, to answer your question, Michael was in meeting rooms with me several times. Michael, Rocket Ishmael was in there. T.O. has come into meeting rooms before. There's been a lot of players that I've seen around, even my playing days, that were welcome back into the facilities, into the meeting rooms.
Just saw at OTAs, they had Legends Day, and you mentioned some of the guys that actually just made an appearance. Charles Haley was there. We saw Kevin Smith, Everson Walls. You mentioned Dat Gwynn. Of course, the playmaker was there. I saw Rocket Ishmael, Dave Campo, Tony Dixon, Hollywood Henderson. The list just goes on and on as far as Cowboys legends. As you said, true to what you said, Jerry Jones welcomes in all the legends. So we got to circle back because you mentioned all these players that were in these meetings, but I didn't get a story, dog. I mean, I need to hear something about when T.O. was in there, when Rocky came in, when the playmaker came in. What was something that was said from one of those legends during a meeting that they attended that you were in?
I'll give you an example. T.O. is a guy who a lot of those players were familiar with, and he came back. Just about how to, when you're running a route, and I want to explain this correctly, right? When you're running a route, how to properly stack a player, right? So thinking about once I get by my defender, now I want to get back on top of him so that defender now is trailing. So if I go this way, he has to react this way. So I can set guys up by getting back on top of them. And a lot of times you'll see receivers nowadays, they'll do the speed release and they'll just leave this room for the DB to kind of get back into what we call in phase, hip to hip. And now he's on the inside of you and you can't get back inside. You got to kind of press back into that thing and get back on top. So just learning those things from guys like T.O. Michael Irvin was a guy who was really physical at the line of scrimmage. Anytime a guy came up and wanted to press you, Mike would always say, when he says, when Deion used to go to shoot those hands out at me, he goes, I used to want to break his forearm. He goes, you do that enough. By the fourth quarter, he's hesitant whether he wants to put that hand up there or not. And now you have the advantage because he doesn't want to put that arm up there and jam you. So Michael, have a little cheat sheet. He was like, I would take my wrist real good, but I would make sure that when I came down on that defender's forearm that I was trying to break it. And I would do it throughout the game. He taught you about the chicken wing. I don't want to push off, but as I'm running down the field, I can chicken wing them and get them off me to create that late separation. So chicken wing, late hands, late eyes, you make the catch over the shoulder. So, hearing stories like that, learning how to run a bang 8 from Michael Irvin, that was the bread and butter play for he and Troy Aikman, understanding that on my 5th outside step, his fifth drop back, that ball was coming out. And I knew I had about 2 steps after I caught it before that safety was bearing down on me. So he just teach you about, like, hey, if you're going across the middle, you got to know, you got to kind of count those steps before you get there. If you got about 3 or 4 steps, catch it with your hands. If you got about 1 or 2 steps, catch it with your body. Let the ball get hit into you so that you can hold on to it. Because if you catch it like this and he got a step, now he's hitting the ball and it's breaking up. So little things like that you learn from these legends that you can kind of put into your toolbox to help you throughout the season.
Next level nuances that you only see right here. Believe in the Cowboys, Jesse Holley along with Ro Parrish, breaking things down when it comes to having the legends in the building, specifically talking about wide receivers. And since we're talking about wide receivers, while we're here, I was thinking, how about we put together our Mount Rushmore of Cowboys pass catchers? Now, notice I said pass catchers. So that opens it up to not only wide receivers, but tight ends as well. So I'm going to open it up. We'll play tennis with it. We'll go back and forth. I'll name one. You name one. We come up with 4. The only thing I will say, because we're not going to put any restrictions, the only restrictions I'm going to put on myself is that I had to have seen them play, not YouTube clips, not NFL Network, not any of that. Now, if you don't want to abide by that, I'm not going to force you to abide by those rules. That's just my person. If I'm going to say this person or this player is on a list, I have to have seen that player play live. So since you are the man when it comes to catching passes, tell me who your first pick is in your pass catcher Mount Rushmore.
Man, I guess this is the Dwayne Wade alley-oop to LeBron James, right? You got to have Michael Irvin, and I am old enough to say that I've watched him play on TV. He is he's a Hall of Famer, 3-time Super Bowl champion. So this 88 for me definitely has to go first on the Mount Rushmore. And I'm not gonna lie, there is a bias. Okay, there is a little bit of a bias.
Okay,
when a man helps change your life.
Okay.
When a man helps change the trajectory of your life, you kind of got to have a little bit of a soft spot for him. Not that he needs it. No. But there is a small bias for me because the man did help change the course of my life forever. And so for me, the first person that goes up is Michael Irvin.
Okay, no question. You have to put him on there because obviously he's a first ballot Hall of Fame wide receiver, Super Bowl champion 3 times over. But as you said, he did something for you. I mean, he hooked you up, dog. He hooked you up.
Yeah, he took care of me.
I definitely got to put Michael Irvin on my Mount Rushmore. I mean, it goes without question. One of the 88s that we know that are legendary. Watching him growing up in the Metroplex, didn't really understand how important he was. All I saw was the plays that he made on the field. I mean, he goes by the name playmaker. But then as you get older, you get around people, you start to meet people, and then you meet him, and you see the intensity. You see the look in his eyes where you feel like, okay, it's the fourth quarter, 2 minutes left, and you're just meeting them randomly on a Tuesday afternoon. So definitely got to go with playmaker on my Mount Rushmore. So we're 1 for 1 so far. Who you got next?
I'm going to the all-time touchdown leader in Cowboy history for the receiver position, Dez Bryant. Dez Bryant was my rookie. He was my rookie. Throw up the X. He was my rookie when he got drafted to the Dallas Cowboys, and Jerry specifically put him in the room with me during training camp and throughout the season because he wanted him to learn how to be a professional and how to go about things. But I saw this young man do some things that, I don't know if we had this conversation before, but it's always something to be said when you hear about the greats do great things, but when you hear the great players marvel over the great players, I'm not saying I'm the greatest, right, of athletes, but I did spend 5 years as 1% of 1% of the greatest athletes to roam the earth in the National Football.
Absolutely. Talk your talk.
And to watch a player like Dez, I used to watch Dez get up in the morning. This is honest to God truth. No breakfast. Okay, no breakfast, nothing but a handful of gummy worms. All right, get to the locker room. One of the last guys to get to the locker room, just throw his clothes on, doesn't tie up his cleats, stumbles out to the pat and go line, and then gets going to practice. No stretch, no fuel, and just moss jokers all day long. And I'm just like, and that's when you know, like, okay, cool. I know that I'm 1% of 1%. But it's a certain level of dudes you go, they just different. Like they different. And Dez is one of those guys where, Aaron Rodgers made the back shoulder fade a thing, but like really the fade ball, we knew if we got into the red zone, if we had 4 downs, 1, maybe 2 of those downs was going to be Dez Bryant, a fade ball in the back of the end zone. And 9 times out of 10, he was coming down with it. So for me, the other 88 is Dez Bryant that goes in the Mount Rushmore receivers for me.
Absolutely. When you talk about a player that has passion, intensity, someone that's going to show up every single Sunday, not only can he catch passes, but he can line up and return punts and do the best he can in the kicking game. I remember watching, obviously I wasn't on the field like you, but watching Dez during a game run an out route and adjust his glove mid-route so the glove was back on properly. Then he made the catch. And number one, Dez caught it. Okay, let's just establish that in Green Bay. Dez caught it. So far, hey, we're 2 for 2 on our Mount Rushmore. Ro Parrish and Jesse Holley believe in the Cowboys. We're talking about our absolute favorite pass catchers ever in the history of the Dallas Cowboys. All right, we got our first 2. I believe that you're up next.
Yeah, I think this is where our list will eventually part.
It'll probably right.
Here. Because number 3, he wasn't here for a very long time, but I look at him as one of the great pass catchers of my time. Terrell Owens, T.O. T.O. He was in the Cowboys uniform. He was in the Cowboys uniform, and to watch T.O., just the way that he runs routes. The thing I came after T.O. To the Cowboys, but to hear the stories about how, and again, you talk about the greats that differ from the rest of the top level, top notch athletes is T.O. It was never a walkthrough for him. It was never, and feel how you feel about T.O., but if you feel the arrogance or whatever, I'm just giving you facts about what he was as a player. And when you hear about stories about T.O. never did a walkthrough. When it was a design walkthrough for the entire team, T.O. always ran his routes full speed. He never, ever, ever wanted to practice not full speed. And that says a lot for a guy who's been a superstar in this league, that he takes walks through that seriously. And so, T.O. for me definitely goes on that Mount Rushmore for Cowboys pass catchers.
No question about it. I think he had over 30 touchdowns in his 3 seasons with the Cowboys. Talk about that work ethic. There's a lot of people will question a lot of things about Terrell Owens, but you can never question his work ethic and how he came to the job. And by the way, if you was in the Metroplex when T.O. was here, hey, he brought the stars out, okay? that T.O. birthday party that he used to have every year.
Yeah.
Woo! Hey, I believe you was probably in the building for one or two of them things.
I was. I definitely was.
Shout out to my guy T.O., who still probably could go out and make some catches in the league right now. Throw you a curve on my next spot on the pass catchers list. Hey, we talked about him before. Hey, I got to give it up for Patrick Creighton. I understand he might not be an all-time great. He might not be a player that a lot of people remember. However, that's my dog. That was my teammate. I know what he brings to the table as far as his athletic ability. He was a key cog on those teams that were successful with Tony Romo leading the way, and you were there as well. So I got to put that's my dog. Me and him go back to sophomore year in Miss Try's class sitting together in home economics. So my dog Patrick Creighton, he is on my Mount Rushmore of pass catchers.
No, I'm with you. Man, like I said, I've said this before. PC, you love that dude to life, man. He is an amazing human being. Will not cut any corners. Will give it to you straight shooter every single day of the week, whether your feelings get hurt or not. You know where you stand with Patrick Creighton every single day. But I'm gonna go with the fourth guy on my Mount Rushmore. I'm gonna go with the captain. I'm gonna go with 82, Jason Witten. Now here's the thing, because I'm a fair dude. I'm a fair dude, and I always try to tell people that I can separate man from player, because I don't always have to agree with the man, even if I agree with the player, and vice versa. Okay, I think a lot of times, because Jason Witten gets this huge amount of credit for being the perfect teammate and the greatest leader, I tell people all the time, you had to be in the locker room. He ain't as great as you think he is. Okay? He's not the greatest leader that you think he is. All right, he ain't taking cats under his wing. There's a whole tight end that'll tell you he ain't taking them under the wing and saying, "Let me show you the way." He's saying, "Step back. I don't want to share the spotlight with nobody else. Just watch me do it." Now, when he did it well. That part, I will tell you, when he got on the football field, another guy who practiced with a level of intensity, a level of professionalism, he brought it every single day. He did not take days off. He did not take plays off. He gave it to you, the complete tight end, where he was able to block inline, run routes. As he got older in the age, he didn't have as much juice, but he can still angle you up and route you up. So for me, the fourth one on my Mount Rushmore is Jason Witten.
I always respected Jason Witten. I mean, this is the guy who will run on the football field without a football helmet on while grown men are attempting to take his head off. And any player that wears the number 1 while they're in college playing tight end, you should know that they like that, okay?
Right. Yes.
You should know off top. So my final slot for my favorite, absolute best Cowboys pass catchers of all time is going to throw you for another loop. You talked about earlier how there's people that come into your world and change your life for the better. When I was a young tyke, you see me right here, running at DeSoto, I was highly influenced by one primetime Deion Sanders. They called me Baby Prime, and we know that he's a Hall of Fame defensive back. However, for one season, he was a full-time two-way player starting at wideout for the Dallas Cowboys. Now, you can say what you want. This ain't your list. This is my list. He is going to go on my Mount Rushmore because to this day, this ain't an advertisement, but I'm still going to rep for Prime. And I'm still going to rep for Prime. And I got some Colorado stuff around here too. But when you talk about the greatest athlete, arguably ever to play the game, arguably the greatest defensive back, for one season to say, you know what, we have some problems at the wide receiver position. How about you come over to this side and do what you do? And you know what? He almost put up 1,000 yards. He had like right around 70-something catches, 60 catches for the season. For someone that doesn't play the position full time to have that type of production, to me, I mean, come on, keep it a buck. You got to give it up.
I'm with you, man. He goes down as one of the greatest athletes of any sport.
Oh, no question.
Any sport.
Yeah, and I don't want to shortchange him at all.
of our generation. I mean, Deion was like that. Yes, Deion was and still is like that. And again, that just goes to show you the level of there is the 1% of the 1%, and then there's the others, right? It is the other league. And so when Deion said stuff like, there should be a different wing in the Hall of Fame. He goes,
Right.
my bus shouldn't go next to some of these other cats' bus.
Right.
My bus needs to go over there with LT and Tom Brady. We need to have a different wing because you can't tell the story of the National Football League without it having a large chapter about Deion Sanders.
Absolutely. I mean, it is what it is. Shouts out to Prime. Love you to life. Everything you do, I'm going to endorse it. I'm going to back you. And people can say what they want about Prime. Two things I'm going to say. Number one, he ain't never going to lie to you. That's number one. And anybody that I've met that was a teammate that actually knows Prime or knows him, not someone that just seen him on TV, saw what he posted, anybody that knows him, nobody I know has ever said anything bad about Prime. And I'm going to leave it there.
I can tell you that Prime was a good teammate because here I have a good teammate theory. You want to hear quickly on my good teammate theory?
Awesome.
I can tell if you played any sports, football specifically, but if you play any sport, I can tell without knowing you from Adam if you were a good teammate or not. When you meet your other teammates, when there's a gathering or a group and they see you, if that person who was your teammate for any significant amount of time either shakes your hand or gives you a fist bump, you, sir, were a bad teammate. If that person that you were teammate for any specific amount of time sees you and it gives you one of these and gives you a half hug, you're a decent teammate. Okay? You're a decent teammate. But when I see you and you and I were teammates, or that other person was teammates for any amount of time, and we bear hug, and it's a bear hug, you were a good teammate. If it's a bear hug and we wrestle a little bit,
right?
If we wrestle a little bit,
yep.
You could call me at any time. I'm an answer type teammate, and that's how I can always tell what type of person you were as a teammate by the way your other teammates greet you. Fist bump, you were trash. Half handshake, you were all right, cool to be a teammate with. Half dab hug, cool. But a bear hug and a wrestle, you a good one. You a good one.
Yeah. Nah, I love that, man. I love that. So again, you already know what time it is. Jesse, Holley, Ro Parrish wrapping things up. Our favorite pass catchers in the history of the Dallas Cowboys. 288s, Michael Irvin, Des Bryant, and then Jesse went with T.O. and has Jason Witten. Me on the other side, I got Des, I got Playmaker, but I also have Patrick Creighton along with primetime Deion Sanders. So it's about that time to wrap up. Hey, you always have the last word, my man. Tell them what you know.
Hey, you guys know what to do. Remember, June is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month, so go out there and get help. And like I always say, man, eliminate the contingencies.
There it is. Always with the love, respect, and salute.